everlasting glamour of our heritage.
Wishing you a good and a prosperous day ahead and giving you the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem. We are here to continue our conversation with the previous details that we brought to you. So, at the starting point of the program, The Legend of Senkanda, here we are discussing about the precious milestone in the Buddhist history. So, as a matter of fact, in the previous discussion, we discussed about the Buddhist culture and the history that is connected with the demise of the Lord Buddha, and also in connection to the Indian history and how the Indian history was related to the Sri Lankan, connection to the Sri Lankans, how the Sri Lankan kings were able to prolong the relationships that they had. And also we discussed about the legendary stories about the advent of the tooth relic to Sri Lanka. Most of all, finally, as a matter of fact, we discussed about how the king and his citizens, his subjects, were ready to make offerings, libations, and prolong with the rituals of the Sri Lankan-ness actually to continue the offerings to the sacred tooth relic. So today, as a matter of fact, to continue the conversation, we have warmly welcomed all over again Venerable Mahavila Ratanapala Thero to discuss about the journey that the sacred tooth relic, that Sri Lanka in connection to the sacred tooth relic, that we and our people's duty, fortunate duties of us. So, warmly welcoming you, Venerable Ratanapala Thero, the member of Supreme Sangha Council of Malwatu chapter, currently serving as the assistant lecturer of the University of Peradeniya in the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies. So, as a start, Venerable Thero, we welcome you warmly all over again to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Pumi. Actually, first of all, I would like to wish you all a very good morning with the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem. I wish you all a very fruitful and very peaceful day ahead. With that remark, actually, I would like to highlight the fact that as we are discussing here a history which goes beyond more than 25 centuries, it is very difficult to, give the full outline of the things that we are discussing within 2-3 episodes of 2-3 1-hour episodes.
Yes.
But as we both are trying to do the justice for the audience, actually, yes,
to give all the details in connection.
Yes, we have confined this as the precious milestone of the history of tooth relic. But actually, even under that kind of a confinement, there are several very important, very crucial incidents that we are supposed to discuss with reference to the history of tooth relic, because without those crucial incidents, what we are discussing here is not complete. Because without discussing those incidents, we will not be able to convey how much a dedication the kings or the rulers of this island and the monks put, or how much of a dedication that they made for the protection of tooth relic.
Of course, Venerable Thero.
Yes.
That means they are really necessary for us to first of all understand, first of all to give an importance, because now just looking at the marvelous procession that is being paraded along the streets of Kandy, it would be also have like a significant, a heart-touching element in our lives as well, to know the history properly, to know the culture properly.
Yes, certainly. I mean, the procession is, as I mentioned last time, the Kandian procession is not a mere cultural event. There is an etiological base behind that. There is a functional value of all these customs that we are fulfilling here. All the offerings, all the tributes, all the salutations that we are making here. So without understanding that functional value, if one would try to observe these as mere customs or the mere tradition, then they will not feel the importance of these incidents. So that is why, I mean, on that basis, I would like to highlight the causes or the reasons behind all these practices. So that is the main ambition of even organizing this kind of discussion. So as we were discussing last time about how the Dalada culture or especially the procession culture started in this island after the arrival of Tooth Relic. We know that Tooth Relic brought to Sri Lanka in the period of Keithsiri Megawan, or in the 9th regnal year of the Keithsiri Megawarna. From then onwards, how the kings of Sri Lanka treated or paid their salutation to the Tooth Relic, and how it became the palladium of nations. Because this is the most powerful source, source of power, source of spiritual power that we have in our island. Without any doubt, without any argument, we all accept that.
Yes, sir.
Though we have, incalculable number of relics in our island, among all these relics, Tooth Relic is recognized as the most prime one, the foremost relic among all these relics. So what is the reason behind that? And in course of this discussion, we are supposed to discuss the fact that actually later on Tooth Relic became the symbol of Sri Lankan stateship. So
sovereignty,
yes,
and
sovereignty,
protection.
yes. So what are the reasons for that? The sacred bow tree was there, and the sacred collarbone relic is there, and the sacred jaw relic is there, and even the South Canyon tooth is also in our island. It is deposited in the great pagoda called the Somavati in order to our legends and in order to our historical records. In such a situation, why we are giving this kind of priority to the Tooth Relic, the left canyon tooth, which is deposited in Kandy city.
Yes.
So these are the important areas that we need to pay our attention to understand the Dalada culture, especially to understand the influence made by Dalada culture to the Sri Lankan culture, which we know today as the Sri Lankan Buddhist culture. Without the Dalada, without the Tooth Relic, we won't be able to discuss about the Sinhala Buddhist culture, because this is the root, this is the fundamental, this is the base.
We are connected to it.
Yes, we are very well connected.
Very
actually.
well connected. Venerable Thero, as a starting question, I have a lot of questions to ask,
Yes.
but as a starting question, yesterday we stopped from the place, the previous session that we had, we stopped from the place where we discussed how this king got used to these prioritized rituals along with his subjects, citizens, and it was something totally new for the Sri Lankans back in 4th century BC. So anyways, I would like to ask, this is a serious situation. This had been a serious situation for the Sri Lankans, and they of course considered that as a, let's say, it was a priority that they totally dedicated their lives. The king dedicated his life in order to venerate the Tooth Relic. But if we consider now, they needed perfection. But in order to get this perfection, had there been something and kind of an authentic written document or a resource that they could follow these rituals prior to the venerations and the maybe libations that is being conducted during that time?
Yes, Pim, actually, when we examine about the history of Tooth Relic, one of the most trustworthy account or most creditworthy account that we have is the Datavansa written in the Polonnaruwa period. So in Datavansa, it explains that from the very day the Tooth Relic arrived in Sri Lanka, the King Keithsiri Mewan made a royal decree. It is mentioned in Dalada Datavansa as thus. I will first say the Pali quotation substantiate the authenticity of the factors that we are discussing here. It says, Dhatung vihara mabayuttarameva netva Pujang vidatu manuvacharameva rupam Rajata kitsirimeka samavhayoso Charitta leka mabilekai sacha sando. So in order to as mentioned in this verse, it says that after bringing the Dalada from India to Sri Lanka, King Kitsirimevan accepted the Dalada and welcomed it with utmost respect, utmost salutation, and that day itself he made a decree that it says Charitra Leka Mabilekai. The royal decree, he passed the royal decree that when we are paying salutation to the Dalada, there are several things that we need to put into practice. There are several things that we need to follow. No one is able to, or no one is allowed to break that law. That is a law implemented by the king of the island himself. Okay, so afterwards there are several decrees passed by some successor kings. Even the time of King Parakramabahu also he passed a decree. King Vijayabahu, the first who formed the Polonnaruwa kingdom, also very important decree regarding the protection of tooth relic. And there is one very important written document which is known as the Dalada Sirita.
Dalada Sirita.
Yes, Dalada Sirita actually written in the Kurunagala period, and in the period of the third Parakramabahu, as I remember, so which might be the pinnacleization of the customs maintained throughout the period actually, because when we compare when we consider about the period of composition of the Dalada Sirita, Dalada Sirita composed after, almost after 10 centuries from the arrival of the tooth relic. So by that time there might be a very well developed tradition regarding the ways and means of paying salutation to the tooth relic. So on the other hand, as I highlighted in the first discussion, so there are different biographies regarding the relics, because relics are also considered as the living Buddha. There is no difference between the Buddha and relics. So in that case actually there are some other relics, as I mentioned earlier, but there are some written documents about the sacred bow tree. But apart from that, there is no any other written document regarding the other relics deposited or enshrined in this island.
Yes, Venerable Thero. So, talking about the written documents and their importance, and also how they came from one generation to the other, we'll of course have to continue it after a small break.
The Legend of Senkanda, the everlasting glamour of our heritage.
ලංකාවේ ප්‍රියතම TV channels ඔබ කැමතිම වැඩසටහන් ඇති තරම් ෆිල්ම් ඉගෙන ගන්න පාඩම් Rewind TV සමගින් TV බලන හොඳම ඇප් එක ඕනෑම තැනක ඉඳන් ඕනම ජාලයකින් දැන් හැමෝටම POTV Go දැන්ම දාගන්න.
බෞද්ධ මෙන්ම අබෞද්ධ ජනතාවගේ ගෞරවාදරයට පාත්‍ර වන උතුම් දළදා වහන්සේ පිළිබඳව කරුණු සොයාගෙන යන ගමනේදී අපි ඊළඟට අවතීර්ණ වෙනවා කලිඟු රට බ්‍රහ්මදත්ත රජතුමා ඊ අලංකාරවත් මාලිගයක තැන්පත් කොට තිබූ දන්ත ධාතුන් වහන්සේ සුවහසක් ජනතාවගේ ගෞරවාදරයට පාත්‍ර වෙනවා. ඒ බ්‍රහ්මදත්ත රජතුමාගෙන් පසුව කාසි කියලා පුතෙක් රජ වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ සුනන්ද කියලා පුතෙක් රජ වෙනවා. ඒ රජවරු දෙදෙනාගෙන් පසුව ඊළඟට එන්නේ ගුහසීව කියලා රජ කෙනෙක්. එතකොට වසර 800ක පමණ කාලයක් මේ කාලිංග පුරයේ දන්ත ධාතුන් වහන්සේ වැඩ සිටි බව තමයි ඉතිහාසයේ පෙන්වා දෙන්නේ. ගුහසීව රජුරුවන්ගේ යටතේ මේ දළදා වහන්සේ පවතිනකොට ඒ දළදා වහන්සේ වන්දනා කිරීම නිසාම බෞද්ධයන්ගේ සිත් සතන් ඉතාමත් පැහැදිලිව ලක් වෙලා තිබුණා. මෙය මිත්‍යා දෘෂ්ටික වූ නිඝණ්ඨ ආගමේ අයට ප්‍රබල පහරක් වුණා. ඒ විතරක් නෙමෙයි ගුහසිව රජතුමා බුදුදහමට දී තිබූ තැන බමුණු දහමට ලබා දුන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම නැත්නම් නිගණ්ඨයින්ට ලබා දුන්නෙත් නැහැ. නිගණ්ඨයින් මොකද කරේ? අසල තියෙන අනිත් පඬු රජතුමාගේ රාජ්‍යයට යනවා. ගිහිල්ලා කියනවා ඔබතුමා වන්දනා කරන ඊශ්වර ආදී දෙවිවරුන් ඒ නින්දාවට පත් කරමින් ගුහසිව රජතුමා මිනි ඇටයකට වන්දනා කරනවා. ඒ මිනි ඇටයකට වන්දනා කරනවා අපේ ආගමට නින්දා අපහාස කරමින්. ඒ නිසා ඔබතුමාට පුළුවන් නම් ඒ මිනි ඇටය ගෙනල්ලා විනාශ කරලා දාන්න කියනවා. ඊට පස්සේ පණ්ඩු රජතුමා තමන්ගේ අන්තේවාසික යුව රජ කෙනෙක් චිත්‍රයාන කියන සාමන්තවරයා නැත්නම් යුව රජතුමාව යවනවා ඒ මිනි ඇටේ සහ ගුහසිව රජතුමා ජීවග්‍රහයෙන් අල්ලගෙන එන්න කියලා. චිත්‍රයාන මහා සේනාවක් අරගෙන කලිඟු රට ගුහසිව රජතුමාගේ මාලිගයට යනවා. ගිහිල්ලා සැල කරනවා අපි ආවේ ඔබ වන්දනා කරනවා යයි සඳහන් කරන මිත්‍යා දෘෂ්ටික වූ වැරදි පිළිගැනීම් ඇති මිනි ඇටයක් ඔබ ළඟ තිබෙනවා කියලා අපිට දැනගන්න ලැබුණා. එයත් රැගෙන ඔබව රැගෙන යන්නටයි. එහෙම නැත්නම් යුද්ධයකට සැරසෙන්න කිව්වා. ගුහසිව රජතුමා මේ වෙලාවේදී චිත්‍රයානට බුදුහාමුදුරු ගැන ගුණ වර්ණනා කළා. ඒ ලෞතර බුදුහාමුදුරන්ගේ දන්ත ධාතුන් වහන්සේ තමයි මේ වැඩ සිටින්නේ කියලා වර්ණනා කරනකොට චිත්‍රයානත් බුදුහාමුදුරු ගැන පැහැදිලා දළදා වහන්සේට වන්දනා කරනවා. දළදා වහන්සේට වන්දනා කරනකොට ඔහු ප්‍රාර්ථනාවක් කරනවා මේ දන්ත ධාතුන් වහන්සේ තුල යම් ආනුභාවයක් වේනම් මා ඉදිරියේ ප්‍රාතිහාර්ය දක්වත්වා කියලා. එතකොට සුදු ආලෝකයක් විහිදුවමින් බුදුරැස් විහිදෙව්වායයි අපි දාඨා වහන්සේ තුල පෙන්වා දීලා තිබෙනවා. එතනින් තව දුරටත් මේ චිත්‍රයාන දන්ත ධාතුන් වහන්සේ පිළිබඳ පැහැදිනවා. හැබැයි තමන්ගේ මහරජතුමා පණ්ඩු රජතුමා ලබා දුන්න නියෝගය අමතක කළේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ මේ පණ්ඩු රජතුමාගේ සන්නස ඉදිරිපත් කළාට පස්සේ ගුහසිව රජතුමා කියනවා අපි එහෙමනම් දන්ත ධාතුන් වහන්සේත් රැගෙන පණ්ඩු රජුරුව වෙසෙන ඒ රාජධානියට අපි යමු. චිත්‍රයානත් කැමති වෙනවා. මහා පෙරහැරකින් යනකොට ඒ පණ්ඩු රජතුමාගේ රාජධානියේ සිට පණ්ඩු රජතුමා බලන මොකද්ද මේ ഘോഷාකාරී ශබ්දය? එතකොට පේනවා තමන් යුද්ධයකට යවන ලද සේනාවක් මහා පෙරහැරකින් ප්‍රීති ഘോഷා පවත්වමින් එනවා. ඊට පස්සේ පණ්ඩු රජතුමාට බොහොම කේන්තියක් ගියා. ඒ එක්කම නිගණ්ඨයොත් ඇවිල්ලා කියනවා ඔබතුමා යැව්වේ ගුහසිව රජතුමාව ජීවග්‍රහයෙන් සිරකරුවෙකු ලෙස අල්ලන් එන්නයි. ඔහු ඊටාම සතුටින් චිත්‍රයාන සමග දර්ශනීය පෙරහැරකින් එනවා. ඔය අරගෙන එන මිනියට මාලිගයට ගන්න කලින් අපි විනාශ කරමු කියනවා. නිගණ්ඨයන්ගේ අනුශාසනා පිළිගත් පණ්ඩු රජතුමා මොකද කරන්නේ? එන මාර්ගයේ මහා වලක් හාරලා ලොකු ගිනි ගොඩක් ගහනවා. ඒ ගිනි ගොඩ නිවුනට පස්සේ මතුවන අඟුරු ගොඩට මේ දළදා වහන්සේ දාලා පුච්චලා විනාශ කරන්න කියලා අණ කරනවා. නිගණ්ඨයොත් ඒ විදිහට කරන්න උත්සාහවත් වෙනවා.
The Legend of Senkanda, the everlasting glamour of our heritage.
Welcoming you back again. We have stopped our conversation from the place where we came across that the Sri Lankans had very specifically followed written records in order to engage in prioritized rituals. So as a matter of fact, we have to know why these rituals were written when it comes to the sacred tooth relic. And Venerable Thero, because I'm raising this question because now in Sri Lankan history, when we focus on different religious embodiments, there had been situations where for so long that the rituals had been passed from one generation to the other in oral tradition. But significantly, in related to the Danta Dhatu, we have the written tradition. So, is there any significance? Why do you have that difference when it comes to the rituals? Is it written or yes, in that case?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, As we were discussing earlier, though we have many kinds of relics, regarding only the tooth relic, we can see this kind of a tradition, a written record, a written decree about ways and means, I mean, how we should salute, how we should pay our tribute to the tooth relic. So this is a really good example for us to understand how importance, I mean, the importance given by kings and monks of Sri Lanka to the tooth relic. As we all know the fact that by the period of Polonnaruwa kingdom, the tooth relic became inseparable with the state, because there was a tradition maintained in Sri Lanka that only the people who has the tooth relic with him is worthy of becoming the king of the island. So with that kind of a tradition, they really wanted to give priority, give the utmost position to the tooth relic. So
since it is connected with the king's authority.
Yes, obviously, because the tooth relic, it is not only a spiritual symbol anymore. By the period of Kurunegala, by the period of composition of the Dalada Sirita, it was not anymore. It was not only anymore a spiritual symbol, but the tooth relic has the ability of deciding or determining the religio-political authority of the Sri Lanka. So on the other hand, that is a good example to understand how the religious elements or the religious authority connected with the Sri Lankan stateship. So that is actually a very important factor that we need to discuss in detail. The thing is actually, in order to my view, that is not a spontaneous occurrence. The thing is, it is a well planned and well executed movement, because in order to the Buddhist explanation, when we go to the early Buddhism, there is a one discourse called the Aggañña Sutta. Aggañña Sutta explains the origin of cosmography, or the origin of cosmology indeed. In order to the Aggañña Sutta, we know that first the political order came into existence, then the religious order came into existence, because political order failed to govern the country in a just way. Then as a result, actually, the religious order came to assist the political order and to show them the path for the spiritual advancement. So that particular fundamental has been very well used in shaping up the Sri Lankan political policies, Sri Lankan state policies. So that is how the tooth relic was that much connected with the kingship of Sri Lanka, or that is how it became the national, the palladium. And if I would come to again your question, actually, yes, as I mentioned earlier, there are several decrees passed by the kings, but the Dalada Sirita is important for us because it explained. In this case, I would like to quote few quotations from the Dalada Sirita to understand the importance given by the kings to the tooth relic. In one statement in Dalada Sirita states it mentions that there were 3 golden gates.
Yes.
After passing the 3rd golden gate, you will see the tooth relic, the casket in which the tooth relic is deposited. It says, දෙවනි රන්බාවෙන් ඇතුළට මහසංගන රජදරුවන් වටුණුගෙට වඳිනවුන් දළදා බලන්නම් දම්දරයන් මිස සෙස්සන් නොවඳිනා විසා. If I would translate that into English, it says, even the kings is provisions or allowed to go until to the 2nd golden gate. He was not even allowed to
the first.
Yes, first one, even into the sacred chamber. So that is the custom maintained. Even he is the custodian of the country, he is the custodian of this island, he is the king, there is no person beyond him, but even he was not allowed to get into the golden chamber. So now you can understand the power of the tooth relic, because it actually overcome the king's power. This is the focal point of the Sri Lankan political authority. Yes. By the period of Kurunegala period. So that was the main reason that they want to maintain a written tradition. On the other hand, there is another very interesting quotation. It says, I will read the quotation first.
Yes, of course.
සිරිලක රජ පැමිණි දැහැමින් යුත් මහරජුන් විසින් දවස විටක් දළදා ගෙට ගොස් වන්දනා කළ සියලු පිරිවර පිටත රඳවා පිරිසිදුව ආදර බුහුමන් ඇතිව ගෙට වැඳ මුසුන්ගේ හැමද අද්‍යව රුවන් හා මල්ලාදිය පුදා නවාරාදිය බුදුගුණ මෙනෙහි කර වැඳ පන්සිල් සමාදන් වනුව ඉසා. So this is really interesting. I mean, the king himself is supposed to clean the sacred chamber. He is not supposed to use or have anyone's help in the process of cleaning the sacred chamber. It is his duty. Okay, so as mentioned in this quotation, it says the king, after getting into the second gold chamber or the second pass into the second golden gate, his responsibility or his duty is first he should clean the sacred chamber, then he should offer the flowers, incense, and he should light the lamps. Afterwards, he is supposed to observe the Panchasila and pay his salutation to the tooth relic. So this is the custom maintained.
That doesn't mean that we are underestimating the power of the king, but his dedication, that means the power that the tooth relic had. Actually, it was not, of course, the power that was taken forcibly, but the people devotedly, the king himself had alone devoted his power and let's say his authority in the foot of the sacred tooth relic. He has made it his own duty in order to take care of the tooth relic.
Yes, actually, because it was, I mean, after from the day of arrival of tooth relic to Sri Lanka, the people were extremely attracted towards it. Though there are a number of other relics, the tooth relic is the foremost, as I mentioned earlier. So the people very enthusiastically attracted with the tooth relic, and the people or the subject of this country maintain that tradition. If one would have the possession of tooth relic, we will accept him as our king. Okay, so that is why by the period of by the period of Polonnaruwa kingdom, all the kings wanted to have the tooth relic and the arms bowl relic in their possession, because otherwise they understood that there will be a uncertainty in their authority, in their power. So for instance, if we would take the King Parakramabahu's exercise in taking the possession of tooth relic into him, it is a great example to understand how important politically, especially, the tooth relic was. And on the other hand, from the very initiation of the relic cult, there was an acceptance that the Buddha's relic possessed the power of rain making. Buddha's relic has rain making power. So that basis also, or not only rain making, actually we believe that when the relics are properly saluted, properly honored, it has the ability of averting all kinds of calamities. Because I mean, when we go through the Great Chronicle or the Mahavansha, there are a number of records available for us to understand how kings utilized the power of tooth relic to avert such kind of calamities, such as pestilence, even famine,
yes.
And even when the country is possessed by evil spirits. So king actually went and paid their salutation to the tooth relic and requested, made a request, made a vow of truthfulness. We call it Satchakiriya in Pali, in front of the tooth relic, asking or requesting the blessings of tooth relic to avert those calamities.
Adding to that, Venerable Theru, now when we go through the Sri Lankan history in connection to Buddhist culture, there is this situation. Now, as we've discussed, the king made it his priority, other than anything of his kingdom, to take his, let's say, to give protection, actually to protect the sacred tooth relic, but in case to provide much of respects and venerations. So I would like to jump from the way back history to the kingdom of Kandy, if you excuse me, Venerable Theru, because in the city of Kandy, in the kingdom of Kandy, when we go through the king's palace and the relic shrine and the let's say the king's palace is located in the same premises. And also we have seen in some other kingdoms, in the sense the earlier kingdoms that we had in Sri Lanka, we have many, generally, the relic shrine being separated from the king's palace. So this is something different in the kingdom of Kandy. Is there any significance in related to that as well?
Yes, Pim, actually that is a really interesting question. The thing is actually from the very arrival of tooth relic into Sri Lanka, the kings of Sri Lanka tried to protect the tooth relic by depositing it inside the city, inside the royal compound. So that was the tradition maintained. But due to the political conflicts or due to the internal the wars and many kinds of political conspiracies, there were some occasions on which they were not able to maintain that tradition. But when we examine about the tradition of creating or constructing the temple of tooth relic inside the royal compound, there are some interesting stories that we need to pay our attention. For instance, when we go through the Anuradhapura period, most of the occasions they have constructed the temple of tooth relic inside the royal compound. But we know due to the foreign invasions and many kinds of political conflicts by the period of Polonnaruwa kingdom, King Vijayabahu had to do a great job to take the very severe task to take the possession of tooth relic, and he wanted to assure the protection of tooth relic very well. So he is the first one actually who assigned the protection of tooth relic to a foreign army.
Okay.
So in the Polonnaruwa period actually the King Vijayabahu assigned the protection of tooth relic to the Velaikar army. We call it it is a foreign army because that was the most powerful army. King was not ready to take any chance, any any kind of a risk regarding the protection of tooth relic. But by the period of the King Parakramabahu, due to heavy internal conflict, he decided that if I would keep the tooth relic in the royal compound, the people will attack the royal palace, then attack the temple of tooth relic. It will be a disaster.
So it was really dedicated activity that the king had. He could not risk any foreign conquerors to come and invade the place. So being the palace being with the same premises as the relic shrine, it would ensure the protection.
Yes, of course. That was the reason.
Yes, Venerable Theros. So we have a lot to discuss more as well, and in relation to this foreign conquests and lot of influences and let's say the cultures that we got, cross-cultural attributes that we got, we'll have to also talk about that questions as well. But before continuing the session, we'll have a small break again and meet.
The Legend of Senkanda, the everlasting glamour of our heritage.
කන්දුඩරට ඇසළ මහා පෙරහරේ පින්බර සිරි විසිතුර ඔබේ වන්දනීයත්වයට පිදෙන සජීවී රූප සත්කාරය අගෝස්තු 13 වනදා සිට 23 වනදා තෙක් පෙරහර පෙළහර අනවරත රූප සංග්‍රහයක්ව POTV නාලිකා 20 150 ඩයලොග් TV නාලිකා අංක 72 මගින්ද ශ්‍රී දළදා මාලිකාවේ සයිබාවකාශයන් ඔස්සේ එතෙර මෙතෙර වෙසෙන සියලු දෙනා වෙනුවෙන් ගෙන එන අන්තර්ජාල විකාශයක් ලෙසින්ද ඔබේ බැතිබර නමස්කාරයට පිළිගැන්වේ. බුදුදහමින් ඔපවත් වූ අපේ සංස්කෘතික දායාදය.
බුදුදහමින් ඔපවත් වූ අපේ සංස්කෘතික දායාදය.
The Legend of Senkanda, the everlasting glamour of our heritage.
Okay, so to continue with whatever that we discussed, now the very important question that we raised before the break was to know about the significance in the relic shrine being located in the same premises of the king's palace. So Venerable Theodore here taught to us of why it had been important in related to foreign conquerors and also as a matter of fact of protection. Yes, Venerable Theodore, so if there's any more that we can discuss about.
Yes, actually, after the King Parakramabahu, I mean, he was really cautious to, he was really concerned about the protection of tooth relic, and he decided to deposit or keep the tooth relic in a place outside the capital, outside the city. So, but there is no any record regarding what is that place. After the King Parakramabahu, I mean at the very end of the Polonnaruwa kingdom, due to the internal political conflicts, Venerable Vachisara, who was the custodian, of the tooth relic at that time, the monk custodian of the tooth relic at that time, he decided to fetch the tooth relic to the Kotmali for the protection because of the internal conflict. Then in the Dambadeniya period, in the period of Dambadeniya kingdom, again the King Vijayabahu II, who was the first king in the Dambadeniya period, and he had to bring the tooth relic from the Dambadeni, and he is the first king who decided actually to create or construct the temple of tooth relic outside the capital. Okay. I mean, before this, from the Polonnaruwa period to the very initiation of the Dambadeniya period,
Yes.
the kings tried always to erect or construct the tooth relic temple inside the royal compound, but he wanted to change that tradition. He decided to make the tooth relic temple outside the capital. The reason might be the protection. He might also have concern very much about the protection of tooth relic. So he constructed the tooth relic in the Veligala, which was a very marvelous tooth relic temple. And afterwards, the Parakramabahu II again decided, no, I will bring the tooth relic again into the capital, and I will construct a tooth relic temple at the very vicinity of my palace. So these kinds of techniques or these kind of trends actually can be witnessed, can be noticed throughout the history. But by the period of the Kandyan kingdom, we know actually from the period of 1505 to the 1948, this is a very crucial period regarding the history of tooth relic, because the situation that we have to face as a nation is entirely different in compare and contrast with the previous, the earlier period. So with the colonial influence, the tooth relic was at a very great stake. It was in a very great danger situation. There were various forces who tried to destroy the tooth relic, and there are some records, especially the Robeiro's record, who was a Portuguese emission, and there is one of his record. He says that the tooth relic was destroyed by the Portuguese. But it was actually misinformation. We can discuss about in due course of this discussion. So the kings of Kandyan kingdom were very cautious. On the other hand, the monks were also very cautious this period, and they always wanted to assure the protection of tooth relic, because they understood that if they would lose the tooth relic, which means they are losing the movement of the nation. Because this is the tooth relic is the spiritual symbol which has the power of uniting the nation together, uniting nation together for a very specific cause. There is no any other spiritual symbol which has this kind of a power, this kind of ability. So on that basis, they wanted to assure the protection of tooth relic. So that is why they were very cautious, and they always wanted to protect the tooth relic at the very vicinity of the royal palace. On the other hand, in Sinhala we call Dalada Maligawa. So Maligawa, this term is also a very important term because the meaning of the term Maligawa is called the palace.
Yes.
Aside the palace of the king, the temple of Tooth Relic is the only place where it has entitled as the palace, the Maligawa. So that is also a good example to understand the importance of Tooth Relic in the religio-political context.
Venerable Thero, I'm asking as a matter of curiosity. So, is it because now we have seen stories in relation to how far this sacred tooth relic had come to the hands of the kings of Kandy amidst all the troubles and sacrifices that the people had to make up to this point of life? Kings, Mahasangha and the citizens all together had devoted their whole lives. Let's say that they had sacrificed their lives in some situations as well. So, Venerable Thera, the question that I have with the discussion that I got is like, I'm going to jump back to the other kingdoms, previous kingdoms again. I just want to know, we of course the audience there, I hope, has a curiosity of how, let's say, the people devoted, many of the Sri Lankans and let's say personalities, many important and famous personalities has preserved the tooth relic with much toil and hardship until it reached the hands of the king of Kandy. So can we come across some stories, some significant milestones in history in connection?
Yes, Pim, actually that is the area that we should focus much attention, especially because without that part the history of tooth relic is not completed. So in this case actually I would like to highlight 2 or 3 occasions which are very important regarding the history of tooth relic. The first incident is actually the King Parakramabahu's endeavor in taking the possession of the tooth relic, because by the period of the Polonnaruwa, I mean when he's tried to become the king of the Polonnaruwa kingdom, the tooth relic and the arms ball relic was not with him. It has been taken by the Queen Sugala to the Rohana. So finally the King Parakramabahu heard that the Queen Sugala is going to go abroad, taking these 2 relics also. So there is one indication in the Chula Vansa. It says, I will go through in brief with these 2 quotations. It says, Bita para samuddante gacchanti ti sutammaya evan sati ayang Lanka dipo hessati sunyako. So this is the thought this is the thought occurred to the King Parakramabahu. He says, without these 2 relics there is no mean. The entire island is empty without these 2 relics. Though there are many jewels, there are many valuable things in this island, without these 2 relics, I think the entire kingdom, the entire island is empty. Okay, so that was the devotion, that was the dedication King Parakramabahu had towards the tooth relic. Then finally he heard from his generals that they could capture the King Sugala with the 2 relics.
So there had been a war?
Yes, of course there was a war because if we would dig into further, the king called the Vikramabahu, who was not a good king, a just king, he actually destroyed the tooth relic temple, and he took again all the valuable things offered to the tooth relic, and he spent those things for his personal fightings. So
is it because his personal corruption, or had there been any influences?
No, actually it was because of his personal corruption, because of the internal political conflicts. There was a big fight who should be the king. So in that circumstances, in that situation, actually he tried to maintain a different policy than the policy which have been followed by his previous kings. Anyway, after regaining the tooth relic, the Parakramabahu make this kind of utterance, joy of utterance. He says that Rajya sadhana vayama palam me patta muttamang yodang ida dhatu yugam passituncha nisevitang. So now I feel, after regaining the 2 relics, he says that he felt that now his endeavor in regaining the kingdom is completed. Because the first he says, Suttvana Paraman Santosa Pasada Pundamanaso Aho Maiham Mahalabo Suladdam Mama Jivita. He says that now I feel that I am living. After regaining only the 2 relics, he felt that he is living in order to the, as mentioned in
as if he's completed.
Completed. His endeavor is completed. Now he feels that he is going to rule a country worthy of ruling. Because without these 2 relics, the country is not worthy of ruling. So that is the tradition, that is the custom maintained by the kings of Sri Lanka. So it is a good example for us to understand the utmost devotion they had towards the 2th relic.
Indeed.
And there is another example. There was a Burmese king actually who requested the Sri Lankan king to send the Dalada or 2th relic to the Burma, because they also became powerful by the period of the Polonnaruwa. There was a king called the Anuruddha. He also requested the King Vijayabahu to send the Dalada. Finally, King Vijayabahu sent a replica of the 2th relic.
There have been several instances in history, even to many other countries they had done the same.
Yes, but I wanted to highlight few here is that the 2th relic was not only a spiritual symbol. Regarding the international political affairs that Sri Lanka had, 2th relic played a very vital role.
Of course.
It was the symbol, it was the focal point of the all international relations. Especially apart from the Burma and some Indian kings, Chinese were also very interested regarding the 2th relic. Because when we go through the Itzing, the travel record, he says in his travel record he has not visited to the Sri Lanka, but after hearing some information from the travelers who visited Sri Lanka, he says the Sri Lankans actually protect the 2th relic with utmost devotion. The 2th relic is deposited in a very magnificent palace. When they open the doors of the palace, the sound goes through entire city. Okay, so and the Sri Lankan believe that if they would lose the 2th relic, it will go to the Nagas. Okay, and also he further mentions that if the Sri Lankans could not have the 2th relic, the Chinese believe that the 2th relic should be in the Chinese emperor, under the Chinese emperor. So there were several Chinese emperors actually who tried to have the possession of 2th relic. In the period of the King Mahanama, in the 5th century CE, the Chinese emperor sent a mission. The Chinese emperor requested King Mahanama to send the 2th relic to the China. Then he again sent a replica of the 2th relic to the China. And there were some Chinese visitors actually who tried to steal the 2th relic from Sri Lanka to China. They really wanted to take the 2th relic to China. So that was the interest they had on the 2th relic.
There in the other ways, Venerable Thiru, we can also come into a situation where the Sri Lankans had a very thorough connection with the Chinese, not only China, but also these international relationships might have been so thorough from the early histories of Sri Lanka. Yes,
of course. In all those occasions, actually, 2th relic played a very vital role regarding all these international relations. And when we come to the period of the Kotte Kingdom, that is a very crucial period, as I mentioned earlier, because we know that the first colonial invasion took place in the Kotte period in 1505. So that particular period is very vital, is very crucial, because the challenges, the dedication, the Sri Lankans confronted within these 3 centuries, within these actually 4 centuries is remarkable. The dedication that they have is remarkable. They face very severe challenges regarding the protection of 2th relic. As I mentioned earlier, there is a one Portuguese record in which it is called the Robeiro's record, in which he explains that in 1560, the person called the Vidya Bandar, who was one of the very powerful state officer in Kotte Kingdom, he fled to the Jaffna with the 2th relic.
Okay.
And after a conspiracy, he was killed in the Nallur Kovil in Jaffna.
Yes.
And under his possession, 2th relic also was there, according to the Robeiro's record. So the Portuguese viceroy to the Goa called the Constantino de Noronha, he took all the valuable things, he plundered all the valuable things under the Vidya Bandara. Among those valuable things, tooth relic also was there, deposited in a golden casket. So they took it to the Goa, and it says they ultimately, I mean, under the influence of the then time Archbishop, they put that into a mortar and crush it and burn it, and they put into the water stream. So, but actually there is no trustworthy account regarding that particular incident. That is a narrated incident by the Hobairo.
Has it been an eyewitness incident from the person who had recorded it? No.
Yes, it says so, but the thing is actually they were misunderstood it. By the time that the Vidya Bandar goes to Jaffna, the tooth relic was not in the Kotte kingdom, because the the people who was entrusted with the responsibility of protecting the tooth relic in the Kotte period, known as the Divanarala or the Hiripitiya Divanarala, one day actually he saw a dream. In that dream, a deity came to him and he warned that there's one very famous Sinhala statement, Kalale Kisille Datamada Ganin Rale, which means there is no point of your love towards the Kotte kingdom now. You better take the Dalada or take the tooth relic and go to the Madarata or the Candian kingdom. So, following the instruction given in the dream, he took the he exchanged the tooth relic with a replica, and he put the replica into the original casket. He took the tooth relic with him, and he went to the Sitavaka kingdom. So that replica actually has been taken by the Vidya Bandara to the Jaffna kingdom, or the
to
Jaffna.
Kind of make it, let's say, to blindfold the conquerors.
Yes. And the Robeiro also later has accepted that it was not the authentic tooth relic, it was the tooth of a monkey. Okay. The fact has been mentioned by the Robeiro himself, and there are some records maintained by the Emerson Tennant also in that connection. He also states that that is not the authentic tooth relic, it was a replica of the tooth relic. So the Portuguese destroyed this replica, not the authentic tooth relic. So these are good examples for us to understand how cautious and how keen the Sri Lankan were regarding the protection of tooth relic. Not only that, they actually there are several occasions. For instance, at the very last stages of the Kotte kingdom, we know that finally the Hiripitiya Divanarala had to conceal or hide the tooth relic inside a cornstone. We call it the Kurahangal in Sinhala,
Yes.
in Delgamo Rajamahawihara. So they have dedicated everything that they have for the protection of tooth relic. So when we come to the British era, there are so many good examples for us to understand how cautious, how keen, and how dedicated the Sri Lankan kings and monks were regarding the protection of tooth relic.
Yes. So, Venerable Thero, getting into such a history, a long history actually, we had many influences from colonizers, not just from one colonizer, but it had been variant colonizers that the Sri Lankans had to face troubles with. Maybe foreign conquerors and people who had wanted the sacred tooth relic as a matter of fact of foreign interchangeable circumstances. Yes. So Venerable Thero, getting into the final session of our program, now today we see that the Sri Lankans are so devoted in the 21st century. It had been, of course, the tooth relic had been preserved up to this point of time, the 21st century, that we glamorously hold a marvelous procession, a significant procession in the month of Luna. So as the final element of this program, I would also like to ask, in case, how can we sit up to this origin of the tooth relic, origin of the traditions that is being connected to the Asala Mahaperahara with all this?
Yes, actually, as we have discussed so far, we can see the nucleus of this tradition from the very initiation or from the very arrival of the tooth relic. But actually, by the period of the Kandian kingdom, there was no procession dedicated for the tooth relic. So they have a procession only for Devalas. But there is a very interesting story regarding this. After re-establishment of the high ordination in Sri Lanka, under the guidance and the influence of the most venerable Valavira Saranankara Thera, he is the one who requested the King Kirti Rajasinghe to add this event to the Kandian procession. So then onwards we are maintaining, we are flourishing this tradition from throughout 3 centuries, more than actually 3 centuries. And on the other hand, this is a good example for us to understand the ability of tooth relic for the unification of different cultures into a common Sri Lankan Buddhist culture. So that is the most important thing, because here in today's procession, there is no, there is a procession dedicated for the tooth relic, and there are three other processions, 4 other processions dedicated for different deities. So this is how the syncretism happened. So this is how actually the religious what we call that religious incorporation or the religious harmony took place. Because before, it is not offend, I feel that I am not offended to say this, before Europeans came here and tried to teach us about the religious harmony, we were a nation who had a good maintenance of the religious harmony, because we had a very good our own plans regarding the religious harmony. So these are the good example for us to how very well and how
neatly and flawlessly
we could protect the religious harmony. Because if we would take the current Kandian procession, we can see, for one example, if one would take the last date of the Kandian procession before the last Randoli procession, it is a custom that the Kataragama Devala comes to the tooth relic. So these kinds of very nice traditions are there. And on the other hand, look, though we have a Sinhala Buddhist dominance, we have allowed the other deities' procession to go in front of the tooth relic. This is as I mentioned several occasions, this is the nation's palladium. There is no more valuable object for us than this.
And it's like a connection of harmony and the peace that we said,
mutual
and
respect,
mutual cultural unification. We have all this. Yes, so Venerable Thero, as we have discussed a lot of situations regarding the Asala Mahaperahara connection to the Buddhist culture, Sri Lankan history, and also Indian history. We had a quite interesting discuss in relation to cults, libations, venerations, offerings, and the importance, most of all, the sacrifices and the hardships that the Sri Lankans, its citizens, had undergone. And we feel so fortunate in having such a history in securing the tooth relic up to this point of time. So today, as a matter of fact, considered as one of the oldest events of the world, Asala Mahaperahara, with such grandiosity, is being paraded along the streets, filled with musicians, dancers, and all the glamorous supporters, and also the guardian deities' protection that we have been able to complete it. So I hope the audience, as you, to have this meaningful event, have an idea of the marvelous history that is being connected to sacred tooth relic before watching the Asala Mahaperahara, because it's not only just important to watch it, but it is also important to get an idea of what cultural elements that we are connected to, not only the Sri Lankans, but thousands of people everywhere in the world, since this is an utmost important event that is being taken place in the world in the month of Luna, or let's say the month of August that we have here. So, in winding the session and with the hope of meeting in the next episode, I hope every one of you have a prosperous life ahead and stay home and stay safe. Thank you.
The Legend of Senkanda, the everlasting glamour of our heritage.